for now, Billy, it's all you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we haven't done Era in 4 months, maybe longer.
Whew.
It has been maybe 5. I don't know. It has been,
Maybe even 5.
yeah,
4 months, maybe even 5.
it has been a long
There's
time.
so many handouts. Where's my fucking character
Yeah,
sheet?
I'm getting my notes now.
Yeah. So you guys, the last time we saw each character, you guys had leveled up. You guys are all.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I definitely didn't do that.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
Roadblock 1.
Roadblock
Yeah,
1, level
which
up.
is fine.
So we are level 6 now.
Or levels of different classes, but a total
Yes.
level of 6, yeah.
Total level of 6.
You are level 6.
Maybe I did.
I'm pretty sure I told you guys that beforehand.
You
Yeah, I feel like I
I
remember
think
that.
I
That
think I
sounds
did
familiar.
it because I gave myself a magic item.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I didn't
Yeah.
do
That was part of the process.
Oh,
Yeah, you leveled up and
I
gave yourself
feel
a
like
magic
I
item.
do remember that. What magic item
Um,
did I get?
Yeah, so I'll just summarize kind of the adventure so far. So you guys started out looking for the notes taken by the old I guess he was the head of the university for like planar studies. He had taken some notes with him when he was let go and fired, and you went to his house to try to find him. Something bad had happened to the house. He had died. A lot of people had died. It just
I would say
bunch of
something
things
good happened to the house because it's our house now.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
it's your house. But you found the notes, and then you brought him back to the university. Mission 1 passed, and then you were asked to do your 1 week like rotational guard duty in the caverns. There
Mhm.
was an area of the caverns where they broke through into the fake Underdark. I called it like the Black Depths.
The downstairs.
The downstairs, yeah. The Black Depths, and so until they could figure out a permanent solution, they needed somebody basically on 24-hour watch, and it rotated between like the organizations in the city, and it was the Adventurers Guild's turn, and you did that. Unfortunately, while you were down there, something else happened. Some weird creatures, extraplanar as well, came into the caves and killed one of your pals with a laser beam to the chest.
More of an acquaintance, really.
I liked him.
Yes, more of an acquaintance. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But you were able to hold off on the attack until they were able to send reinforcements. And then after that, it was determined that some weird planar stuff's going on. You've been asked by the leader of the town, which is a duke. It's a ducal
Some
system.
kick-ass duke.
Yeah, kick-ass duke. And they asked if you would go to the nearby duchy, which is called Granitos. You were in Harborton. They asked you to go to Granitos, kind of undercover, and figure out if they are also seeing some weird planar issues, because they haven't reported any. But it's kind of like the dukes don't really talk to each other in that way. They're kind of holding their cards close. It's more of a
like a pre-9/11 intelligence agency.
Exactly. They are all under the same umbrella of the kingdom of Trimblemore, but
Very specific reference.
yes, but they once again for competition they don't like to give out each other's secrets. So that's what you've been asked to do under the guise of being sent on as a grain merchant guard. But then when you get up there, your job's gonna fall through, and then you're gonna be up there with nothing to do, and then that's kind of the cover that you have, and then you've also leveled up to level 6, and so that is kind of where you are right now. You haven't left. You're about to get on a boat to go up the coast, and then in through a very large, fast-moving river called the Gouge that connects the sea to the ocean to like the inland lake sea where Granitos is. And so I think it would be a good idea right now to I made this thing, this mid-campaign checkup that I don't know if we posted. I think we did.
Oh, we did go through that in our interlude session.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's a good idea to go back over it.
Go through it again.
Go back over, just because it's kind of questions
Yeah.
that make you think about, get back in the mindset of your character, of what
Mhm.
what your character's goals are, what he's feeling, all that other stuff. We don't have to go through all of them.
Yeah.
It's really the character one, which is the first 5 questions, because we went through all the other ones already.
This is interesting because I do not remember anything about this character, so I need a refresher. So I'm glad we have
like remind you what I
tool.
know of, but I'm not going to tell you how you feel. But
I luckily found a Google Doc called Zyzel Level 6 Changes, so we're back in the game, baby.
Woo.
Hey, see, that's why it's good. So
That's why I take notes. This is why you take notes, folks.
Yeah, I definitely told you that you leveled up.
Yes.
Okay, so we just wanted to go through. Who wants to go first? Who wants to volunteer?
Who remembers the most?
I probably do
No
because
hands go up. Okay.
I would say it's.
I edit all
You're
the
the one
stuff.
with notes.
Yeah, I also have notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris edits
Wizard
the
Claws is-
podcast, so he's listened to them
and
several
he's also
times.
pretty thought out. He's a good thought out character, well rounded. So we'll go through and for Lord Wizard Claws, have you any change? Do you remember what your initial goals were when you started, and like have they changed? Kind of tell us about how you're feeling, Lord Wizard Claws, and like his overall goals.
Yeah, so his he's definitely trying to like establish himself in the world, and I think the quest so far he's like filling out Umarin and Zyzel, and the dynamics there are a lot of fun. So with his quest for like building Cat Hala, I think that's still his overarching goal, but I think he's also having a lot of fun just kind of like learning from and with Zyzel and Umarin, because this is his first time really being out of his bubble, and just has this like curiosity of the world. So I think in that case, like things are on track. But it's nice when he has things that get in his way and kind of prevent him from doing what he wants to do, because that's something he has to deal with, that he can't always get his way, and he can't always, he has to learn the rules and parameters of this broader world.
Yeah. So for bonds, we've seen a lot of interaction with him and some bonds forming. I'm not going to speak for you, but from my perspective, it looks like he's forming bonds with the characters, but it's not really the bonds that you think of. It's more of like a master subservient, or like a bond that he would have with underlings.
Yeah.
And he also had some bond with like some animals as well, which kind of makes sense. But you want to go more into like what kind of bonds he's had, or with other characters he feels closest to?
Yeah. So it's interesting because like trying to put my mind in the perspective of a cat, and cats definitely, I feel like, domesticate us in a lot of ways. So it's interesting to try and play that, but also like not make it feel like icky in game. And Mark and Eric, please let me know if like it ever gets to that point, where it's like, yeah, he's trying to manipulate you guys to do stuff, but it's like silly stuff, or maybe stuff you would have been doing anyways, and he just wants to feel like he's done that more or less. But just trying to play that without being like overbearing to the team or to the other characters. But he definitely does have that sort of like, oh yeah, obviously I'm the one in charge and you are my caretakers, and that's like how cats kind of view the world. So it's fun to explore that, but again, like trying to very much balance the agency of the other players too.
Yeah, we also saw a little bit of his bonds with some of his previous life in the interlude. With there were some issues with the university, which is they had some bonds with his old owner, master, whoever you wanted to Tiviar, Albus Tiviar, right?
Mm-hmm.
I may say that, yeah. And so you saw a little bit of that, and then also it seemed to be a message from Fistandia, who we really haven't gotten to be introduced to. It's a little bit of a mysterious character. I'm interested to see where this goes from and who she is. But almost like a message from him, like, some things are going on. Don't trust exactly what's going on, because it did seem like Fistandia and the university are at odds on something.
And he definitely has like mistrust, especially towards like male human wizards because of his some of the incidents that happened in his past. So he definitely is a little more skittish about that.
For sure. So we've also seen him kind of his main flaws are the ones you'd expect from like everybody is a fish out of water. We have 3 fish out of water characters kind of, but
a fish out of water. I on purpose made him a fixture of this city.
Oh yeah, okay.
Very much.
Every other character I ever make is like it's fish out of water.
Oh yeah, we keep leaving the city
because we don't. Well, yeah, but we don't know like when you make a character for a new campaign, you don't know much about the campaign, so you're like, I'm new to town. Like
but you
like,
also
I'm from a little sect you've never heard of. Like,
you also made him, kind of a subspecies that's in this city not looked favorably upon by the upper class.
I shouldn't say fish out of water. Everybody's kind of like I should say an outsider.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Either way, not quite a fish out of water, but but Lord Wizardclaw actually is like a fish out of water, as in, and his flaws are a lot of he's a little bit arrogant. He's a little bit out of like he doesn't see the world as I would say as humans are. I don't want to say he doesn't see the world as it is because it's all perspective, but his perspective is just so vastly different than most most humans, elves, dwarves, any other character. His perspective is so different, which is I would say it's a good it's a really cool thing, but it also can be a flaw, which I think is fun just because it's harder for him to make those connections with people just because he sees things so differently than others. Do you have any other things to add about like how you've seen his flaws evolve or change, or is any flaw that you really think is really cool and you want to dig down into it?
I'm actually working on that. I did just create like a D&D backstory template that its purpose is to kind of make those flaws, like ideals, bonds, traits, actionable in game. So it's like, oh yeah, my character's bossy, but like, how does that manifest itself specifically? So I don't have a direct answer for that, but like trying to figure out ways to make those flaws more actionable, whether they're like impulse, like cats can be like curious. So like maybe overly investigating stuff to the point where he puts himself into a pickle. That could be an example. But I'll leave it at that.
I think that's fun. I think that's something to add on. We always talk about how like flaws make interesting characters.
They really do.
Yeah.
And trying to it's not just something to put and throw away on your character sheet when you first make it. And I really love that everybody's really diving in headfirst in your flaws. And I can control the game, so never feel that like. If you're diving in so headfirst in the game that you think that you're making it a detriment, I'll find ways to reward you. I reward you for punishing yourself. I don't like punishing you. I like you punishing yourself, and I find ways to reward. Is what I try to do, but I'm not doing it. Let me know.
Well, you can never run for office because of that soundbite.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. I'm
glad I was recording.
Yes, exactly.
I will punish you.
Punish you.
You will punish yourself. You won't even realize it.
And then with this, like with the current way that this campaign is going, like the direction, I know that he's very curious. Is he excited specifically about like digging down into this mystery, or does he just really want to go explore the world, or does he just fun to go out and do things? Like what is his thoughts about going forward?
Yeah, I think he's definitely vibrating with energy to realize his dream. But he's also like, he likes being useful. He likes being like recognized and valued because a lot of times it's like, oh, it's a cat. So I think sometimes when he is like, oh, you're contributing value to this, like for him, it's like validation. So like going on these missions, doing these things, like he does take some fulfillment in that he's like, being useful.
Yeah, and that's a good thing for me to know because that gives me a lot more options of in-game character reward. That doesn't have to be a new magic cloak or a new spell he found, but just
if like
knowing that,
if he was given like recognition or prestige, like to become an equal to like a human in terms of like stature in the world, like that would be a pretty fulfilling goal for him to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that most things, underestimate him at the beginning because he's more of a novelty. Like, oh, look, it's a talking cat who does a little bit of magic. Isn't that cute? But like to show that he's actually on par with other wizards and deserves, not just respect or not just like fame, but like fame based on his accomplishments, not just because of his uniqueness. So I think that's a good angle or a good thing for me to know going forward. And I put that in my notes.
Cool.
I think there's anything else you wanted to say about Lord Wizard Claus?
No, I think the last thing is just like he really likes. And I think it's fun relying on Umran and Xyzel as like checks in the world, like being able to like Xyzel, what's this? And like having a conversation with Xyzel about something that he wants to understand more about. Like those are fun, just like role playing opportunities. So I like having those with the guys.
For sure. All right. Does anybody want to go volunteer to go next?
I can go next.
All right. So
character sheet.
Yeah. So Xyzel, I do like it that it is a little bit weird that Xyzel knows a lot more than you know. Usually it's the other way around.
Right.
Is that like you're metagaming because you know more than your character does. But in this instance, like you're like so many times you're like, would Xyzel know this? I'm like, oh, yeah, Xyzel would know this.
And there's a hard thing that like in role playing games in general, like when you role play somebody smarter than you, or like if my intelligence were a 20, my human intelligence is not a 20. So like you have to ask the DM that kind of stuff. Like it's easy to role play somebody like stronger than you because you just roll the dice and like, do they move the door? Yes. But role playing those things that are more like in like on the bottom three, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, it's a lot harder. It's just not necessarily harder. It's just different. And you have to interact with it in different ways. So yeah, Xyzel knows like he's born and raised in this city. So he will know a lot about the areas he's touched. And there's going to be other areas like he's not. He has no clue. Like, I don't know. I never go over there. So trying to figure out with you ahead of time, or even like in media, like, yeah, does he know this? Would he know that? And then on the fly you say, yeah, he would know that, and be like, oh yeah, I know that. Like you just have to switch back and forth really quick. That's fun. That is really interesting.
Yeah, it is it's not just difficult for you, it's difficult for, the GM needs to realize when your characters, when one of your PCs has high intelligence, that you can't just wait for the players to make that connection. Because like if there's something, there's like two things, they're like, these are connected. A smart character would know that. Then you have to, tell them or roll those. Hey, just like, hey, everybody, roll an insight check. Roll in something like, oh, I think you see that these are connected somehow, because your characters may just, fly. Especially if you have, characters that aren't really good. Everybody in real life is good at making connections and or not that good at making connections. So you have a character that's, that is not really good about seeing those fine details, or a player, I should say.
Yeah.
But their character is, then you really, as a GM, need to like take the step and be like, all right, I'm not waiting for him to do it, because, if you have a character that's, a level 20 or, intelligence of 20, then he's not getting the benefits of that if you're just relying on the player to make all those connections. Sorry, my phone is going.
I was like, who is playing a xylophone in the back?
All right, I'm putting this on. It's going ape shit. So yeah, we'll kind of go through the same questions before, like the same checkup. So like your goals before, his goals were.
Remind me.
Yeah, like his goals weren't as like clear cut as like Lord Wizard Claus. Like Lord Wizard Claus has like a goal which is an actual thing, and
Xyzel wants to pay rent.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like in his design, I wanted to like buck trends as often as possible. Like he doesn't necessarily have a tragic backstory. Like he's not like looking for glory or for like redemption or like anything like that. Like he's trying to get by. And has like kind of stumbled into like, okay, I'm good at this thing. I can make money doing that. And like, that'll be a fine job for a while. And maybe I'll do something different. So it is I don't know. I really wanted to like try to hone like a working like underclass with him, and like dealing with. I mean, I've growing up kind of had this in myself too. Like I never saw much for myself as a kid because I didn't have like role models around me that were like doing great things, so it's not like, oh, I want to be a doctor because my uncle's a doctor. What, like, if you don't see people being successful, you don't feel like success is attainable for you. And I feel like that's part of him, like he's not looking like, I want to kill the biggest dragon and be a lord of the realm, because like no one does that. So why would he think that that's possible?
So it's not like those types of thoughts don't even enter his head.
Yeah, and that's like, I want to potentially or maybe eventually be part of his growth of like, oh, okay, other things, like greatness is possible, and I can achieve it if I push, or whatever. But yeah, in the beginning, he's just like, I'll take this job for money because I need rent this week.
Yeah, especially after being kind of not just looked down upon for his like his heritage and his race, but also like having somebody in position of power that is actively trying to, hold him down in essence. Like he has somebody has a grudge against him with a person, in power, which is not, it's hard now, it's hard any time for somebody that if you, anger somebody of power, they're going to be able to hold you down. And so that's kind of interesting to see, like with his, how his goals change and how his is that like as he is able to, get around or ignore or evade this, powerful noble's, actions against him, does that like increase his like self-worth? He's like, hey, like I am holding my own against this guy in position of power. Like, is that something that I don't know?
Yeah, I think we may be getting to his character like a little turn in it, because most of the time he's just been, he'll avoid and try to run or talk his way out of situations and evade, and not necessarily like stand up to power. And this is again part of why like I wanted him to have like a powerful built-in adversary is for that, like that struggle of like the powerful versus the like disenfranchised or powerless, because again, like you have no, what's the word, not like examples. You have no examples of people of your stature standing up and winning against people of their stature. So like, why would you attempt it? So like slowly learning and becoming more powerful himself, like his attitude toward that situation might change. And to be honest, I don't know how. He may might get darker. He may realize he's like a better man, and like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, his shift in this interlude, we heard him making a deal with this unknown, we don't want to call him like a crime boss, a member of this shady organization, that he, named Derek, that he is, he's kind of reached out to, because he thinks that, I don't know why he reached out to him. Like Derek is promising these things or saying he can help him with these other things. And I guess they seem, it seemed the agreement seems beneficial, or else Zaisal probably wouldn't have done it. So I'm interested to see how that changes his character.
So this is another thing that like I don't know what the word for it is, but I guess like a mechanic that I've been interested in doing for a while, which is like tracing a character's personality arc through level, like multi-classing levels. So like if you start as like a paladin, and this is the one that I think people would do, and there actually are rules for it, and you're like a noble, like I'm a hero kind of thing, and then like some shit happens to you and you lose faith, like there are mechanics in the paladin class to do that. Like you were, what are they called? Like
Fallen,
Oathbreaker.
Oathbreaker,
yeah. So like, I think that's really cool. And like, you have now your abilities are different, and you can kind of trace like their mental state through it. And like, do you redeem this person and come back as like a cleric or a paladin again, or whatever, or a monk? Like, how do they react to these events mechanically, on top of the role playing that we will do. So that's something that I've wanted to explore for a long time, and specifically like wanted to with this character. So yeah, I found my notes for when he switched to level 6. Like I said, like sought out this shady character, basically asked for help because he didn't feel like he was contributing enough in like the physical aspects of our job now, because Zahn died, and it's like Zeisel was 6 feet away from him when it happened.
Zahn did not die.
Zahn, that beautiful
Zahn,
warrior,
who is just he is Steve Zahn.
Yeah, I thought Zahn died. I wrote Zahn on here.
It was Cal.
Beautiful.
Okay, well then never mind. He never cared about Cal. He switches back. I'm kidding.
Cal was like the little, he was the little like,
yeah.
You didn't know
over,
and he got lasered through the chest, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, immediately.
I remember that. So anyway, he saw one of his comrades die, whoever it may be. long may live their name. And it's like, this is real deal stuff. Like, this isn't, we're not playing with like ghosts and doing little hunts anymore. Like, so he sought out and is like, hey, I need help. I need training. What is it going to take? And, to make me more effective so that I or my comrades don't die. So I like, this was a catalyst for him to get more serious in his like work, which he's never been before. No matter what he's done, like a fish hand, a deckhand, like a bartender, he's always been, this is no big deal, whatever. Like, I'll joke around, I'll take it easy, I'll do the least amount of work in order to get to the end, and then I'll bounce and do something else. So I want to explore how this is affecting him, both mechanically and role play wise. Yeah,
and with that, have you so you formed some bonds obviously with these characters. You had a little bit of a bond with Zahn, and minor one with Cal, just because he was like an acquaintance for a while. And I forget what the human wizard female who you guys were serving, Estelle.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Something like that. I don't remember. I should, but it's been 5 months.
4, if not 5 months.
Yeah, I have to go through my notes. I mean, she's a named character, so I should be able to find her.
Yeah.
But let's see if I have just the name on one of these folders. Oh, great. This is going to go great. Does not say Esther. Her name was Esther, not Estelle. Cool. Yeah. So like you have those bonds. Really, we haven't really met a lot of people outside of the party of his backstory. We've met a little bit of like so he performed at the Chip Pearl. Pete was like the orc bouncer, and he kind of has like a interaction with him. But and then we have, of course, Tildor Flowerfield, the guy who hates him. Besides those characters, we don't really have a lot of characters from from the area or the time before we knew.
Yeah,
as the players before we knew him. And so like, is that by design? Is that flashed out?
I think it will. So I based part of this character at least on Lenny Bruce. And to take a caveat to that, Lenny Bruce specifically on Marvelous Miss Maisel. I knew about Lenny Bruce, and like I probably heard a bit or two of his, but I really like the character in Marvelous Miss Maisel. He's like a mysterious, like he's in jail, and like she's in jail, and he's like, oh, first time kind of thing. And then like he like floats through this underworld as like kind of like shady, but people like him because he's funny, but he also owes everybody money, but they're like, that's just him. Like, so there is this kind of like, he's not super close to everybody, but everybody's like, oh yeah, that's Zeisel. Like he's harmless. Yeah, he owes me $5, but like he's a funny guy. He'll be good for it, or I'll beat him up and he'll give it to me. You know, like that's how the world works. There's just a different set of rules. So I don't think he is especially close to anybody in his like previous life. And I think that that's a lot of times that's by design. Like in that world, you don't get close to people because the distance kind of helps you glide. And that's, again, that was his MO, is like doing the least amount of work as possible to get through and just kind of gliding through. So I feel like he has a lot of acquaintances, and really not any close friends. So being in this group is probably the first time that he's like cared about other people, whether or not they live or you know, succeed. And then talking with Derek, I think, is going to affect him in similar ways, but I don't know how it's going to work out. But like, I think it might be like a flip side, kind of like similar ways, but with a darker tone.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean that really bounces off of like his flaws as being kind of a smartass who's really abrasive. So like, you know, he's very quick to get people to hate him.
Yeah.
If you take it the wrong way, you know, he's only for like select few. It's very much like a Lenny Bruce. Like, you know, the average person who listens to Lenny Bruce is gonna be like, what the fuck is, like, this guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
But like the people that like him, like, you know, he's very
and again, I think
polarizing.
I think that flaw, it's another like survival tactic in the world that he grew up in. Like you gotta be tough, and he's not tough. He's a little guy. So you've got to be tough with your words. You've got to be quick-witted, and be able to like stand up to like bigger physical people with a quick jab, and hope that if that jab hurts him, it makes everybody else laugh. So at least they'll protect you if he comes in swinging. And it's just that kind of like you give as good as you get world, that breeds these kind of, you know, like construction site jab back and forth. You know, you're in the back and you're just making fun of, and it's like mean, but not mean spirited. But if you are outside of that world, you don't get the spirited part. It just sounds mean.
Yeah. And I mean, he doesn't like a lot of it. Like he doesn't have like the clear cut, like easy to distinguish flaws, because a lot of his flaws, seen other ways, can be like beneficial. And it's very much similar to like to Lord Wizardclaws, in that like you can say that his timidness and his like preference for self-preservation, like, is that a flaw? It's not really a flaw because it helps him. It can be a flaw for storytelling purposes, but like, you know, because everything's not like just this is a clear-cut flaw, it's bad. Like, because self-preservation is a natural and very like highly attuned thing, but like in different situations it could end up being a flaw. And the same thing for like that like standoffish, like keeping a distance, like that's a self-preservation thing, but it also could be a flaw to where it's harder to make those bonds. So I think that's like that's the way that flaws make things fun, is because a flaw is not always, you know, just all 100% of the time a negative thing.
Yeah. Well, when they come in contrast, like, or in contradiction to your other values, that's when they're really juicy. It's like, oh man,
exactly.
He wants to run away, but he's also feels like he needs to stay and help because he's, you know.
So you want that. Yeah. You want that conflict. The hard part is like acting that out in the thick of it. Like I've oftentimes will forget, like, oh yeah, my flaw is I don't want to fight. I want to run away, when I'm like, I cast fireball. You know what? Like you're heated up and you want to play, and you're like, shit, he wouldn't. I don't know if he would do this. So I try with flaws to have like relatively easy in-game like mechanic. Like, okay, if I am like, what does this flaw actually like? Because like you said, Bill, a lot of times they could be like, oh, this is actually good for me. So like, what does it actually cause me? Not necessarily damage, but that's the best word I can think of in game. Like, how is this flaw going to harm my progression in some way? Because like as like if you, this is going to sound super dorky, but if you like study storytelling, like for movies specifically, like a lot of times the main character is going to have a flaw, and in order to like succeed, they have to overcome that flaw in order to like beat the bad guy, whatever it is. So like that's, I always try to think of that, like what flaw does he have to overcome in order to be successful? And he may have to overcome that flaw constantly, because we all do. Like we all have flaws that like you don't overcome it once and you're a changed person. And now I never procrastinate. You've got to constantly overcome it. So I try to think of it in those ways. And I don't know if I was necessarily successful with Zeisel, because I don't feel like I'm playing his flaws.
Well, I think a part of that also could be like self-preservation really only kicks in when you feel like endangered. And like in essence, you really only felt in all of our time, you've done really well in all of the combats. Like you guys are very combat oriented. You all have skills that match very well, but like you have the lasered scorpion that could one-shot a character is like the first time that you had an actual like, oh shit, like this thing's like, I may not make it out of this. Like, if you're just rolling over things, like, you don't have that self-preservation. And I think that that's going to be interesting is as things go on, obviously the difficulty of the combat is going to go up because, not only are you guys leveling up, but the characters and the enemies that you're fighting are going to, just to make things more interesting. Yeah. And so like, if things start going and you're like, oh man, this is not like, this has turned a corner and it's not looking good for the party. Like when everybody else is like, oh, I'm going to buck up, I'm going to do this. Like his eyes was like, I'm going to take a couple steps back. Like, and be prepared to like, I've surveyed my escape routes.
But as like a point, I think I agree with that. And I think that that's going to be fun to play through. But as a point of order of like a cautionary tale of like, when you write your flaws, you have to remember to play them in the game. During that laser scorpion fight, I forgot to use nimble escape, forgot that I had it. And that definitely would have been something that he's like, whoa, disengage and hide. Like, let me get out of here. Instead, I like mixed it up. I got close because I'm like, I'm not hitting with this. I need to hit him with my rapier or like, and that's so those are the types of things that I try to make mechanics that mimic or like mirror my flaws and bonds and stuff like that. But you got to remember to do it in game.
It's hard.
Absolutely.
It's hard.
Among all the other things you have to remember to do.
Yes, right.
And you don't want to be like, I don't want to like second guess like you playing your own character. Like, would Zeisel do that? Yeah. Like, I'll just like, I'm gonna try to, and I think everybody else to be like, ooh, bold move, like things like that. To be like, oh wait, is that a bold move? Like,
or is maybe that's Eric playing and not Zeisel playing?
Yeah, that's like maybe it's a good thing though, because you can forget we're all human to be like. And I've done things where I've done a character, I'm like, oh man, the character wouldn't have done that. But like, it's a really cool thing to do. And I'm like, but there's no way you would have done that. Yeah. But I'm doing it anyway because I want to do something cool. And so,
And it's also, it's one of those like that specifically, like I don't want to like skip around a combat and leave the other guys out to dry because like I made a guy who's a coward. Like that's also, so there's a fine line between, like Chris said, like agency earlier and like, I don't want them to have to do all the heavy lifting because now I'm overcorrecting and role playing to where he's like, oh, I don't want to fight. Like, so I don't know. It's again, a fine line. And like every situation is, you have to start back at zero and figure it out again.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot of things are complicated. And those kind of decisions can not only lead to like inter-character conflicts, but also inter-table conflicts. Like, if you, oh, my character's going to hide. You're like, you just leave my character to die. Like, lead to those type of things where, like, because we have ownership of our characters as much as we like to say, like, oh, I want to tell a good story. Ultimately, we want our characters to succeed and live. Yeah. And so, like, like, oh man, my character died, but it was a really good story. Like, that's awesome if we can do that. I'll take it.
Yeah.
And most people, and luckily, I think all of us could do that. But like, your average player, when they're early on and they're wanting to play a game, they see like their character death as a failure on their part and not like as a cool story aspect. So it is like balancing those things. So like, I want my character to do this, but it is leaving them high and dry. Like I know I'm guilty of that. Like when charging in for head first, because my character would do that, and fucking my characters and stuff like that. Like, it's a fine line that I think we've been doing it pretty good, but I'm interested to see how you deal with that, especially when you have, you can always have character issues when you have no player issues. You can always say like, "Oh, I love what you're doing, but my character thought you were an asshole."
And it's easy to have character issues when there's no stakes.
Yeah.
So like that. So that's maybe also part of it. Like I can, when I don't know, if I know we're gonna win, I could cower back. But if like I need to get this much damage, or we might not be like, then there's real stakes. Not that that's what I was thinking of, but it is. Here's another like layer to the onion you need to think about. Like it's easy to have conflict between the group when there's no stakes, and when there is stakes, y'all gotta fucking fight this laser scorpion.
After the stakes are done, then you have your argument.
Yeah, then you fight.
Yeah. Then you have your arguments. Well, speaking of leaving the characters high and dry, let's get to our frontline fighter. And not really, but like you are kind of, you don't have that self-preservation as you've seen. Your character can dish out a lot of damage with some monk stuff, but like you are up there in the front, and you are the one who's going to be the one getting hit, and you don't have the same. You have a little bit more of a noble cause and a noble following, which is interesting because not everybody has it. So I'm excited to see how that goes forward when you have you are passionate about something that you're a little bit more selfless. With Umran, but I want to see like what so far your goals have been. From what I see, is you're really wanting to you felt you have not quite a tragic backstory, but an unhappy backstory where things happened in your old dwarven. You have a history with the dwarves, and you try to do good. Things didn't actually work out as good, even though best of intentions, and you're almost on. I wouldn't say like a pure redemption, but it's almost on like you feel that you need to redeem yourself. You're not a lot of other people feel like you need to redeem yourself, but you have like this redemption arc slightly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that will put you at odds with like a self-preservation character that doesn't have that redemption arc. Like so, it's very interesting. How do you feel that your characters, after seeing all this like weird shit going on, and planar issues that could be it could be a dangerous situation for the entire world, maybe, you don't know, or at least maybe the city or the region. Like, does have your goals expanded because you're like, oh, more people are in danger, or are you still kind of laser focused on like the dwarves and the people that you were trying to help beforehand? Like, are you just concerned about them still, or has your concern expanded to others? Interested to hear.
I think his concern kind of meanders because he's a kind of an in the moment type of person. So, being in a particular place, he's worried about the people around him kind of inherently and on like a personality level, because that's part of the reason he didn't want to stay where he was in his younger years, because he just thought he could do better than his family had. So then his ultimate goal is to kind of it's more for himself. Like he wants to go back to kind of pay off a debt of the dwarves who took him in and let him live with them. And it turned out that he kind of became a target because he had what people needed. So he feels badly that people kept trying to attack them, over and over again. And ultimately they basically asked him, to leave to try to take the problem away. But it wasn't like he was being outcast. You know what I mean? It was kind of like they accepted him. He was able to get in and become like a true believer in Mithril Spine. But that's kind of he sees it as part of his duty and his first kind of act of contrition as a monk and sacrifice was to leave this new place. Like he finally was like, oh, I left my family and these people are super cool, found family. And then they're like, well, actually, this is a lot. Can you, take your adventures on down the road to try to save us? Because they are secretive people, and small in numbers. So he's used to that. On the other hand, so like being in a party, he's like, okay, we are, a small group of people. I know how to work together with them. I care and understand that unit needs to, be healthy and protected. So he's able to kind of easily transpose his personality into the adventuring world, but ultimately has that draw to go back to, the place where he first studied and learned about his religion.
Yeah. So we had a little bit of a realization in the interlude that may affect a lot of your characters, especially those bonds. Is you have that bond with those dwarves. Every dwarf we've come across, whether the innkeeper or the couple, or this old lady that you talk to, you've immediately had this close connection because you've lived with dwarves. You feel yourself like part of that community, even though you're human. But then after talking to these, this I want to say this dwarf, I forget what his name is, Hathroth Strongarm, and him telling you a little bit about how the dwarven community as a whole kind of sees the followers of Mithril as like not quite a sect or not quite a cult, because they all believe in Mithril. It's not like they're believing in a weird god, but a lot of them are upset with Mithril because they blame him on like the lack of actual Mithril. Like, Mithril has kind of disappeared. We don't know where Mithril is, or we're not finding those veins anymore. And, as the patron god of that element, some people hold it against him. And, he's kind of dropped out of normal favor and worship with the normal dwarves. So, do you feel any, like, does that change your bond with dwarves? Like, are you now like a closer bond with the Mithril Spine dwarves, and you're kind of like separating yourself from the outside dwarves? Like, well, if they think we're weird, well, I think they're weird. Or how does that, what does that do to you? Like this bond do you have with with all dwarves that you had before you found this out?
Yeah, I think like he kind of fell in with the sect right off the bat, so he probably sees himself as more one of them than just like larger dwarf culture. And because they're not also kind of obsessed with Mithril spine and his teachings of kind of being stalwart and especially good in battle and things like that, a blacksmith doesn't need that. Maybe in this, it's not as rough a tumble world as the world of the gods. He might not see the need for that. But yeah, so I guess they're kind of, he doesn't think everyone will be accepting of him by any means, because it was just that kind of group that was like, hey, man, you're one of us. But he does recognize that it was like kind of a small group, so he's not going to expect to go into like a major dwarven city and be accepted as anything other than like a human might be treated normally, but he does think that he knows enough and has kind of enough true knowledge and clout that if he found like traveling Mithril Spine followers, they would be like, oh, you really are one, and you have the official iconography that shows that and stuff. So he's like confident in that small group, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting to know. Hopefully you'll run across more dwarves in that sect.
But yeah, he kind of, I think from that last interlude section, I didn't entirely have it down, but I think we pretty much got it down where his response is that like it's a two-way road. Respecting the gods gives you bounty, and there are people who think, I guess maybe he might see other people as feeling like almost entitled.
Yeah.
Like, well, you
Sure.
can't be an atheist and then say, and then blame God for your problems. Like, if you don't think there's enough mithril, that's probably because you're sitting around talking about how Mithril Spine has betrayed you. Like, why would he give you his, like, why do you get entry into some sort of kingdom when you don't believe in it?
Yeah, that's I get like that entitlement that
Classic
they are
religious
yeah.
trap, like,
Yeah.
well, you don't get it because you don't get it.
Yeah, welcome to religion. Yeah, like
Yeah.
is he naturally worthy of worship based on his godhood and then he rewards you based on that worship, or does he deserve worship only based on the good deeds that he does to his followers? Like that is definitely like the chicken and the egg type of thing. Like that is religion in a nutshell, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
start getting into that. We don't
And I think that's totally wrought out by, the Hathro.
Mhm.
They have, a bit of a connection. I think Amryn's totally respects that people have different religions and everything. It doesn't bother him. But he believes in his own stuff. And look what happened. He got some mithril from someone who didn't believe. He's like, I don't think there's, he's taking it from us. This isn't great. This doesn't have much value to me. And then he gave it to someone who it does have tons of value to, at least, ceremoniously. So I think in his mind, he's kind of like, see, I got a vein of mithril because I think, I've been doing it right. So it's kind of that he sees things as a positive feedback loop a lot, I think, for himself, that because he has to reinforce, he doesn't have a church or anything to go to on the regular. So he just kind of has to be like, oh, I know enough that I can lead myself down this path.
Would that be one of his flaws? Like his like it's kind of funny that like his selflessness and his like willingness to do self-sacrifice, throw himself out, do these things. I also consider a flaw, even though it is, like, oh, well, if you try to protect yourself, that's a flaw. If you run head first, that's a flaw. Like, yeah, it's all about how you do it. Like, and so I think that having also that like that confirmation bias, religious like, oh yeah, like look, I got mithril, so my worship of Mithril Spine was rewarded. Like, I'm confirming my worship of Mithril Spine because of this, and like kind of that to you is more important than all the things that Hathro said. Like Hathro said all these concerns about him, and he's just like, well, I know you said that, but I got mithril. So
yeah, he's like, that's totally true, and I respect that you see it that way.
But
kind of thing, but it's like that internal knowledge of being like, just super religious. Like, I've got it figured out. So like, I get it, Hathro, but like, I think that's, I kind of built that in from his flaws, because the flaw I got from like the official table was once I pick a goal, I become obsessed, and with it to the detriment of everything else in my life. I was looking at that as kind of like almost his life in general. Like, he has chosen to follow a god who's like, it would be cool if you fucking died in battle, dude. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So like, he's willing to help out a bunch of people in a village who are just like poor and being attacked by orcs if he's walking by. But part of it is because he's like, God's gonna love this.
He's like a zealot on the down low. Like, he's a secret zealot. Like, when you think of zealot, you don't think of that type of guy, but his beliefs can be
100%
classified as zealotry.
And that's why all the other dwarves are like, you guys should come above the ground every once in a while. Like, you should come to the surface once every 10 years or something, because they're a little wary of it. Like, you can go, that could be a deep rabbit hole to fall down for a dwarf to get obsessed with these kind of thinkings. So
well, the last question I'll ask is kind of on his direction of where we're going. Like, are you excited about, you've never, you're leaving, you're going to Granitos. You have like this mission, not given by dwarves, but another way for you to like kind of protect, die in battle, all this other stuff, like doing a good cause, it is in service, whether that's direct or indirect service of your god. So are you excited about this? Are you like going to be like on the bow of like the ship, like leaning off, like those movie scenes where the guy's like, onward to adventure?
Definitely, I think he's excited about it. he likes just kind of cool things and technology in general. So seeing the way a big center functions is kind of just cool. You know, like that small town, oh, I'm going to a big city kind of thing, because he lives historically kind of in the outskirts or rundown areas. And then, yeah, heading east is good in general because that gets him closer to Ormston eventually, which is kind of in the mountains to the far east. And also, yeah, just opportunities to potentially bust heads is always prevalent on the road. So he probably has in the back of his head that he might get a couple chances to shine.
Get the monk, that staff, and them karate moves, put them to use. But yeah, I'm excited. I think you guys have a lot of internal, a lot of things to consider as you guys are, walking up to the ship to meet. I'll just kind of remind you. So you guys are going up to meet the. I have the map with everybody's name. Let me just move to that so that I know. You're going to meet Jolani McGran. Terrible name that I chose. But she's kind of like the one of the like the grain merchant guild representative that you're going to see, and then you're going to meet her at the docks, and and she's the one who's giving you the quest and transporting you to Granitos on a ship that she chartered, a grain traveling a ship. Grain usually goes kind of one way, so the grain comes from I guess grain gets different areas grow different grain, so it's kind of like they're shipping grain up and shipping grain down for these areas, and that's kind of, she chartered you on one of their grain transport ships, and so we will see you guys next adventure when you meet up with Gerlani.
All right.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks, Bill, for the recap and the refresh.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Perfect.
And remember to give you guys your level 6 and give yourselves the I'm excited to see what you guys can do with level 6, and you also each got your items, and I think if you are confused or forget which ones they are, I
don't remember what I got.
I'll put up the interlude video that has that stuff, because I think
perfect. Yeah, we can listen to it again.
Yeah
I think because you got something from Derek. Everybody got something from their thing, and then you also got to choose one
from like the armory or whatever.
So you got to choose an item, and you got an item from during the interlude from your patrons or whoever. So hopefully you guys remember which ones those are.
That's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and head over to +1togaming.com for more live discussions, actual plays, character creation tips, and more. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.